Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. My guest in this half hour is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an immigration attorney and activist. She's here to discuss her experiences with the hardships of immigrant families. Before we get to Kate, though, we're going to run this clip about families separated by ICE during the Trump crackdown on immigrants.
Dad, puppy is fine. Daddy's fine.
What happens to the children when a parent gets taken by ICE?
We'll explain.
No!
For the parent, it could be months inside of a detention center or being deported back to their home country. And for the children, uncertainty, wondering if their parents will ever come home.
What's wrong, puppy?
Across Massachusetts, thousands of immigrants, many with no criminal record, have been detained by immigration authorities. In May alone, federal immigration officials arrested more than 1,400 people in Massachusetts, more than any other month on record. A considerable number of those arrested are parents. Left behind are their children, some too young to understand what has happened. We recently followed two families with children whose parents were taken by ICE. The absence of a parent leads to severe financial stress and a mental toll that can be devastating for the children. With President Trump's recently signed budget bill that includes more spending on immigration enforcement, experts say this could lead to more ICE arrests, leaving more children without their parents.
That is from a Boston Globe story talking about two immigrant families who have been torn apart by Donald Trump's draconian deportation policies. Our guest in this half hour is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an immigration attorney and activist. Kate, welcome to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon.
Brad, happy to be here with you. Thanks for having me on.
First, tell me, does the story in the Boston Globe today about the immigrant families and the hardships on them, does that reflect your experiences with immigrants?
Absolutely. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I've been doing this work for about 20 years. I've represented a lot of families, and as of late, I mean, since the second administration, they are targeting families. The vast majority of people getting picked up are not criminals. They're being picked up at court appointments, at ICE check-ins. They are people who have families here. They have children at home. I have clients whose kids are in foster care because of their detentions. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to see what happens to these families and these kids as a result of these policies. I mean, up close and personal, it is some of the most horrific stuff I've seen in 20 years of this work.
Well, tell us, you're on a bus tour right now, which is why your screen is moving back and forth. Tell us about the bus tour.
I am. So I have a converted school bus, a schoolie they call it, and it's a passion project, a community engagement project of my law firm. It's called El Bus Sin Fronteras, which means the bus without borders. And we renovated this bus to go mobile into immigrant communities where they are, because so often now it's hard for people to access good legal services. So we're on a big tour right now. As I'm talking to you, I'm driving into Denver, Colorado, where tomorrow I'll be hosting an event at the Mexican consulate there. And then we'll be heading into more rural parts of the Midwest after that.
Okay. I'd like to, why don't you, in the spirit of the clip from the Boston Globe video we just saw, why don't you talk about some of the personal stories behind the immigrants that you've been working with?
Well, I just got notification about a client of mine, a young girl named Wendy. She's 19, and on Friday she had a bond hearing. Wendy is from Cuba. She and her mom and her dad and her 9-year-old brother came to the United States a couple of years ago. They were politically active in Cuba and they had been targeted, so they came here seeking asylum. And on a month ago, on Wendy's 19th birthday, they went to their ICE check-in appointment. They were all dressed up and they were thinking they were going to go out to dinner to celebrate Wendy's birthday after the check-in, and instead they were all detained and separated. Wendy was put in an adult detention center because she was 19, and her mom, dad, and her little brother were taken to a family detention center. They were released, and Wendy had her bond hearing on Friday, and it was denied. And Wendy is a remarkable young woman. She is pre-med in college with a 3.8 GPA and a scholarship. She graduated from high school with a 4.0. Nobody in this family has a criminal history. And despite all of that, she is separated from her family and detained. So that's just one story of many that I could tell you.
Well, let me ask you a question about that because that's an interesting story. You know, you hear about people like her who's studying to be a doctor or training as scientists at university somewhere across the United States. And we're kicking these people out. And I wonder if anybody's in the Trump administration is thinking about the contributions people like your client could make to the nation in the future. It just seems so terribly short-sighted to me.
Oh, I think that that's absolutely true. And I think, I don't know, my sense of it is that they don't think through these things. I mean, they made a statement about they're going to continue the farm raids and deport all of the agricultural workers, and then all the people who are on Medicaid, many of whom are employed, of course, can go and take the farm job. I mean, the thinking is that short-sighted that, oh, we'll just fill the positions that immigrants might have taken with Americans who aren't working. And and I think, frankly, there's just a lot of racism under these policies, and really a belief that people like this, like immigrants from other countries, particularly people with brown skin, don't have a lot to contribute. I think that is their belief, and so they don't. I have a lot of these conversations with people. I go on conservative talk shows and I go into the lion's den to try and have conversations with people, and I don't get the sense that there is an understanding or an appreciation of the contribution of immigrants, other than that some of them recognize that immigrants will do dirty work that a lot of Americans won't do, which is in many cases true. But to your point, I mean, there is in all sectors and very high skilled immigrants that are needed, entrepreneurs, tech, engineering, medical, all of that. The contributions are everywhere, of course.
You know, when I read these horror stories about the treatment of immigrants, it's not the same, but my grandfather, Jim Bannon, was the first Bannon born in the United States. His parents were Irish immigrants. And when I was young, my grandfather used to tell me stories about when he first tried to find jobs as a young man, and we're talking about in Rhode Island here, not Texas or anything. He used to run into signs at stores and factories saying "No Irish need apply," and that left an indelible uh, feeling with me about devaluing immigrants just because they practice a different religion or they're a different race. And it just seems to me that, why do you think? Well, let me ask you this question. In recent national polls, there's been a significant decline in Trump's ratings dealing with immigration. Do you think these horror stories and stories like the ones you tell have had an impact on American public opinion?
I do think that, and I know that we saw that in the first Trump administration in the summer of 2018. It was another summer, And during that period of time, Trump had implemented the zero tolerance policy at the border and had decided to prosecute all of the parents who were coming over with their children, and they started to take the children away from their parents at the border. And I was working up close and personal that summer with many moms who had had their children taken from them. And there was a national outcry there because people can see themselves in families. You know, everybody's a parent or a child. And so when we start to see the families get torn apart, I think that's when people start to be able to put themselves in the shoes of these people, and then they start to fight against the policy. And I think that that's the turning point, is when we start going after the families and the children, and the stories are told that the American public won't stand for it anymore. And so I'm hopeful that there's enough of an outcry this summer, like there was in 2018, that we start to see a shift in some of these really horrific and brutal policies.
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Sorry, we had a technical problem there, which our able executive producer, Mark Grimaldi, has fixed. My guest in this half hour is Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who is an immigration attorney and activist. Uh, Let me ask you this question, Kate. Why is there so much widespread hostility towards immigrants? And, is it just raw racism, or is there something more to it?
Well, I mean, before the break, you brought up the attacks on Irish immigrants. You know, back in the 1700s, 90% of the people immigrating to the United States were white, English-speaking Protestants. And so Catholics like the Irish or Germans were under attack, and they were talked about and depicted as invaders and rodents and, you know, ne'er-do-wells. And then, of course, during the 1800s, the Chinese population was attacked, Eastern Europeans, Italians, Jews. And when you look at the cartoons of those eras, the way that the people were talked about and depicted, it repeats a lot of what we see today. And so you know, on the one hand, it's good to know that we've been here before and we'll make it out again. But to the point about why do we keep doing this as a nation? Why does this keep happening? I think that there is this base human nature that people have, to make themselves feel better and slightly more important, and to keep things the same as they are now. There's a fear of change. And so when a politician like Donald Trump comes on board and uses that base human nature to encourage those behaviors and thoughts in people, and lies to them and tells them that all of these brown people who are coming from Venezuela and Cuba are eating pets and they're trafficking children and they're here to hurt everybody, and people believe that, it only just triggers sort of a natural instinct in them that existed already. And fear is a really, really powerful motivator. And so it gets people to come out and support Donald Trump and believe that this is right and good. And so there are so many people who see these horrific courthouse detentions and these ICE kidnappings on the street, and they still believe that this is the right thing because they think and they've been told that this is keeping them safe. And frankly, the voices on the other side have not been loud enough. I will say that. I mean, that is one criticism I have of the previous administration, is Biden didn't talk enough about the positive aspects of immigration and the things that he were doing. He let the conversation be led by Donald Trump about immigrants being bad. And that has become the narrative for many millions of people in this country. And at this point, it's really hard to convince them otherwise, even with videos and photos and statistics and data and all of the things that you would normally employ to convince someone of what the truth is.
Have you had the opportunity to visit some of these, concentration camps for immigrants? There have been a lot of national stories on alligator Alcatraz in Florida and the conditions there. What are the conditions like in these camps? Okay.
Can you hear me
Okay.
now, Brad?
Yep. Yes, we
Sorry, I'm
can.
on the bus and we have Starlink, and when we go under a bridge, the internet goes
Oh, okay.
away. So
Oh,
sorry about that.
okay. What are the conditions like in these immigrant camps?
Oh, they're really bad. We have this capacity for about 41,000 people nationwide in our detention centers, but we're upwards over, I mean, at last count, which was over a month ago, we were more than 50% over capacity. And so the conditions are really, really bad because of overcrowding, just to start out with, but then also just the lack of consideration and care about the needs of people. There have been reports of people having to eat out of their plates with their hands shackled behind their back,
Yeah, I saw a
like,
story about that.
yeah, and women having to go to the bathroom in front of men, and people being left in vehicles overnight, hot or extreme weather, extreme heat, extreme cold, insects, infestations. I mean, all of that stuff, depending upon the facility, there are reports like that coming out. And then on top of that, there's a lot of mental health and abuse that goes on. A lot of the people who work in these jails, I mean, a lot of the people live in these rural communities and they don't have a lot of job options, and they're not bad people. I've met a lot of them over the years, but a lot of people who are drawn to work in these facilities do it because frankly, they get off on it. They like being able to abuse and mess with immigrants. And so they taunt them, they mistreat them, and the way that people are talked to and treated is as bad as the physical conditions that they suffer in these facilities. And it's really, really distressing. And historically, Congress has oversight over these facilities, but it's another thing that the Trump administration has cut back. And they've said, if a member of Congress wants to come and oversee a facility, they have to give us 72 hours notice. So there's no surprise oversight or auditing of these facilities anymore either.
Now, as we said before, you're in a bus. Where are you now?
So I'm outside of Denver, Colorado. We're going to be going to the Mexican consulate tomorrow and doing a presentation. And with the bus, we like to set up a, tent and hand out goodies and hand out know your rights cards and give immigration advice to people and help them feel supported and appreciated and educated and informed in ways that isn't too oppressive or upsetting. Because right now there's a lot of know your rights stuff coming out, but sometimes it can be scary or not fun to go to one of these events. So part of the bus is to spread cheer and fun in immigrant communities, and not just bring, only the know your rights information, but also like some fun and celebration for what immigrants, the importance of immigrants in this country. Because really, we wouldn't, of course, we all know this, we would not be who we are if it weren't for the contributions of immigrants before and now.
Yeah, and it just seems, well, we've covered that. I just don't get it. Let me ask you a question. You've been an immigration attorney for a long time and activist. What got you into this work?
It was an experience in one of these detention centers. I was a law student. It was during the Bush administration, and I signed up for the immigration clinic at the law school. And my professor sent me to the first family detention center. And I was doing an intake with a family, a mom, a dad, and a little baby, and they were all in prison uniforms. The baby had this like navy blue little onesie that was issued to her by the prison, and they were from Iraq. And this was in about 2006 or 2007. And her mom asked me if I would take her baby out of this detention center and take care of her until they could get out, because it was so horrible for them in there. And I remember just being like, that was the moment for me, seeing the reality of how we were treating just asylum seekers, just people who were here for protection. And this is how we were treating them. And I couldn't believe it. And I knew that I wanted to fight for this forever for the rest of my career. And I wasn't able to take their baby with me that day, but I did, as a student attorney, get to take that case and win it and get them out of jail. And it was the most gratifying and impactful experience of my life. And I've never looked back. There's so much work to do. Of course, it's only harder now than it was then. And there's just so much work to do in the field of immigration and activism for all of us.
Well, let me ask you this final question. My daughter is a high school teacher, and there are a number of immigrants in her she teaches. And at the beginning of the school year, they were having weekly meetings about what to do if an ICE agent showed up at the school. Uh, do immigrants who are approached by ICE have any rights, or we've just basically wiped all those out under Trump?
Well, it's very different now, 6 months in, than it was back then. We were telling everybody about constitutional rights, and you don't have to answer a question. You don't have to identify yourself unless you're being arrested for probable cause, and you can negate a search, all of those things. But of course, what we're seeing is that the Trump administration is routinely violating people's constitutional rights. And so it doesn't really provide much help to tell someone what their rights are. The better thing to do is to tell people what to do, how to prepare. You need to have a plan. You need to know who's going to come get the kids if you get detained. You need to know where all of your important documents are. You need to have a lawyer on retainer. And then to the people who witness these unlawful arrests and these kidnappings, we all need to know how to be good witnesses, which means get out your phones, record the event, ask for badge number, write down how many agents are there, what cars are they driving, what are the plate numbers. You're not supposed to interfere with an action because that could get people hurt, but you can definitely record and become a really strong witness, because a lot of the times in times like these, the justice is coming later in the federal court system, not in the moments of the actual enforcement actions.
Kate, that's unfortunately all the time we have. Hope you can join us again sometime. This is Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I want to thank our guest, Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, who's an immigration activist and attorney, and John Bennett, White House correspondent for Congressional Quarterly and Roll Call, and our intrepid executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. We'll see you soon, back with more of Deadline DC.